So how does all of this security and authorization work? And how do all these components we've talked about in other videos like STIGs and ATOs and certifications, how does it all fit together? Now, we're talking a lot about the federal government, but please realize that many of these standards, these controls, systems, certifications apply to all verticals that want to secure a system. Because if you implement a security plan, you're going to have it documented and you're going to have a way to validate it, hopefully, right? So let's go ahead and go through some of the sections here. Security controls. The industry talks a lot about security controls. I talk a lot about security controls. And so here I've kind of laid out what a security control is. Now there may be other components, but in general, here's what it is. You have a description, risk, implementation, automation, and measurement. So basically we're describing what the control is going to do and how it fits into the bigger system. Then we're going to describe its risk, whether we do that through a pen test or whether we know what the risk is. For example, a port. We may know a specific port in Apache needs to be plugged. How we implementing it and measuring, and then we have measurement and automation. How do we get all of that? And with measurement and automation, measurement really we're talking about continuous monitoring, auditing, making sure that what you've implemented actually works. And so what is the difference between a security control and a STIG? There is no difference between the two. They are primarily the same thing, but they're referred to differently sometimes. If you read any documentation on a STIG, it will say that it is a security technical implementation guide for security controls. And that's exactly what it is. It is the guide, but they've broken it down into servers and things of that nature. See the other video on STIGs for a little more information. But more important, the bottom part of the screen here is what is a system and what is an ATO. A lot of people think that an ATO is just restricted to the federal government, the authority to operate, and they would be partially correct. An ATO is used within the federal government, and you see several examples of ATOs. HIPAA, FedRAMP, FISMA, for example. These are all federal, and the Dodd-Frank Act. All of these are federal collections of controls and systems that need to be compliant in order to do operations. So what the federal government has said, for example, with its FedRAMP ATO, it said we have these 295 security controls. We're going to group them all together, and we're going to call it an ATO for FedRAMP. Now, when you dig deeper into FedRAMP, you're actually seeing all of the security controls, the related STIGs, everything represented in the top part of this screen. All of it supports the ATO of FedRAMP. Now, let's get one other definition here on the right side of the screen, a system. Represented here, you have your operating systems, your network, things of that nature, and we've talked about this in another video about STIGs. But these are all items, whether they have an individual STIG or whether it is a combined STIG, maybe your application service, the consumable, right, may be email that uses a database. Well, we may not have a STIG specifically for the database and another one specifically for the email application. We may combine it together, or it may be different. It just really depends. And a system is kind of the same way. We may say our system is going to provide email, period. And when you go to ATO, your ATO, for example, a FISMA ATO, it may be a FISMA moderate email ATO. Now, you could say, I want to have a email and a database in my ATO, so you'll combine multiple systems to make up a single ATO. I'm going to leave this full screen on for just a moment. Pause the video if you want to take a screen capture or take a look at what uh, these components are within an ATO environment. Remember, you have the security controls represented upper left. You have the STIGs, which controls and STIGs are essentially the same thing, just some different terminology. You have the ATO, which is the goal of every organization. They have to be authorized to offer whatever network service or compute service they're going to provide. And then, of course, on the right hand side, what is that compute system made of? It's called a system, and that system is made of all of the components: compute, storage, operating system, network, whatever the consumables are, applications, things of that nature.